Morning, everyone, and, and welcome to our Heavenly Parent Holy Community Oceania Hundoke. And today we have Randall Apps presenting. It is Saturday, the 15th of February 2025, or the 18th of January in the 13th year of Chongalguk. So thank you all for coming. And let's begin with a bow to our true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind, Chanjin, Champuninge, Kyombe, Paro. And let's recite our family pledge, both in Korean and English.
가전맨세 1. 전국 주인 우리 가족은 참사랑을 중심하고 본연 땅을 찾아 본연의 창조 이사인 시산천국과 전산천국을 창건할 것을 맹세하나이다.
Family pledge number 1. Our family, the owner of Chongalguk, pledges to seek our original homeland and build the kingdom of God on earth and in heaven, the original ideal of creation, by centering on true love. Thank you. I'd like to ask Reverend Stone if you could offer the opening prayer, please. Like he's not there, so just all of the opening prayer, just join me. Okay, most beloved Heavenly Parent and true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. As always, we're grateful and thankful to be able to meet together as a community to offer this precious time to you, our Heavenly Parent, and to offer it to our true Mother who's working hard to really bring about success of the opening of the Chongal Sanctum. We know that this is your home and that finally you can reside there and that your sovereignty can truly manifest and be substantial. You are longing to come back home. You created the earth to be your dwelling place together with your children. And because of the fall, there's always been conflict and wars and for thousands of years, but through our true parents, we've been able to succeed in realizing your true parents here upon this earth. Your physical body in which you can live and manifest has been here since 1960, and through the efforts of our true parents, all the historical debt has been paid, and the end of the completed Testament age was announced, and the beginning of the Foundation Day and Chongalguk, and now we're at the point of having at last the home, your home that you longed for, to really be completed, and where you can dwell and where we can go and attend you. So we're grateful for this opportunity to be together, and we ask your presence as we listen to your words and hearts, and that we can do this, with, the fullest extent of our abilities. So by fulfilling our responsibility and investing ourselves, then we know success can be achieved. In attending Holy Mother Han, I pray with gratitude in my name, John and Medes of a blessed family. Archie. Thank you, and let's give a warm welcome to Randall as he shares this morning.
Okay, now I am come up this way. One of my devices has the PowerPoint and the other actually has a camera. So I'll be using two devices. So excuse me if there's a bit of confusion there. Okay, so when I joined the church, I was an active Christian. And so this is a bit of my experience as a Christian, seeing the principle and how that helped change a few things, including develop my relationship with God so that I could have a bigger understanding of God. And God was so much bigger from my own understanding by the time I had understood more about principle. So I had an active faith, but to that I added hope and love. Now, faith, hope, and love is very famous from the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. And it finishes off saying, faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Now, I've got a problem with the screen there. Okay. I've got something that's blocking part of my view. Okay, good. Okay, now, basically, for a lot of the members, I was wondering, what I should give today. And I was thinking that you've got friends that have a strong faith in different type of faith groups. Myself, I was a Christian at the time. And you want to introduce the principle to them. Now, for some people, with believers, they would say, listen, I already have a faith. I don't need to look at other type of faith groups. Believers should not worry about sharing understandings of God. The different understandings that we have is limited. And so by sharing different understandings of God, we're understanding God from a different point of view. There's the story of the whole elephant. I don't know if you're all familiar with that. Quite a few of us are. But the whole understanding is that there was the king of Siam, now Thailand, but the king of Siam was trying to work out which of his wise men should he really listen to as an advisor. And so he blindfolded them and said, there is a thing inside this area, and it's called an elephant. And you've never seen an elephant before. This was way, way back when they weren't familiar with elephants. And so he would say, now you go inside and tell me what this thing is. And so one walked up and he felt the ear, and he thought, this is like a rug that hangs, or tapestry that hangs on the wall. And he came out and he was quite confident that his limited experience was the whole truth. And someone else comes in and he comes up to the tusk and says, oh, it's like a spear. Another feels the trunk and thinks, this is like a hose. And they're all arguing as they come out and says, no, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. So someone runs in to see what it is and smashes again into the side of the elephant and says, it's like a wall because I just broke my nose on it. And another thinks, maybe I just have to crawl in. And so he crawls in and finds the leg and says, this is like a tree trunk. And they're all getting these limited experiences with this thing that they can't see since they're blindfolded. And to understand the depth, the extent of what this thing is, we should be, not worried about sharing ideas, because God is invisible. And so did you realize that the different faith groups that are around started in either the Far East to the Middle East? This is a very intuitive type of area. Some parts of the world have different characteristics, but the Middle East to the Far East are very intuitive in different ways. And so they developed the different spiritual religions that we have today, the major ones anyway. And so why did God develop the different faith groups in different areas? He didn't say the same thing in all the different areas. And they have been hanging around for 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years, 2,500 years or more. And in Christianity, there's a saying that Jesus had, unless a house is built on stone, it will fall. So unless a religion is based on God, it will fall. So if these things have not fallen, if they have not fallen, there's something to do with God in these. God had something to do with the start of these. And it's like, this is my child, and this one is the artist. This one is my child. This one is the doctor. This is my child. This one is the architect. This one is my child. This is a plumber. These different children have different strengths, and I appeal to them in different ways. So the different religions around, what do you go to people in the university and say, oh, you're not learning the same type of things that I'm learning, so you must be wrong. No, there's different aspects. And so we can understand how big God is by sharing a few ideas, because a lot of the concepts that we have in dogmas in our religions, as a Christian, there were many theologians that came up, and they would talk about things, and whatever would fit inside their head, they would be able to say, okay, this is what God is. And God is much bigger than what could fit inside their head. So we don't just limit ourselves to that. This is what I found, at least, as a Christian. So don't be worried about sharing different ideas, because the whole thing of fear is limitedness. And as the Bible verse down the bottom there says, 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out all fear. Okay, so as far as my faith goes, I was Methodist, then Uniting Church, and then later had a Pentecostal experience. And so by high school, I was an active Christian. In my last year of school, there was a Christian fellowship, and I took over that. And it started off with, when I took over, there was just 3 members in the group, and then I did advertising. I did quite a bit of outreach to the different people in the school, and different Christians felt comfortable with coming along. And by the end of the year, we had 30 different people that were coming along to the different meeting instead of just 3. While I was at school, I read the whole Bible, and then after school, I was volunteering at a Baptist orphanage, and I read many different autobiographies of different Christians, including those that had spiritual experiences like Pentecostal experiences. And so I did a pilgrimage of America to visit these authors, and that's when I met our movement, the Family Federation, and was introduced to the principal. So at that time, my understanding of being a Christian was I was a Christian because of Jesus. He was the one who sacrificed. He was the one who had the affinity to understand what it was like to be human. He could see things from our point of view as well. But with my faith, there were a few things that were a problem. Now, I wouldn't actually admit this to non-Christians, but I'll trust you guys. But this may be something that is not unique to me as far as Christianity goes. I was not a Christian because of God. I had a hard time with God. And I'm ashamed to say that now, because I've developed so much more of a relationship with God because of the principle. But my understanding of God as the theologians had, taught different things of Christianity, was that in the Old Testament, there was wars and God had a lot of blood on his hands. In the New Testament, there were too many people being thrown into hell. So it was too much judgment. So he's either blood on his hands or cold-hearted. And I couldn't relate to a God like that. I wouldn't, be a Christian because of that. I was a Christian because of Jesus, not because of God. And I'm ashamed to say that, actually. So I was going to my school that I started with was a Methodist school, Newington, and it had the crest saying "In Fide Scientiam," Scientiam, "In Fide Scientiam," which means to faith adds knowledge. But when I question things from a cynical point of view, from a scientific point of view, from a point of view away from God, it just made me fear God more. So this was the kind of faith that I had. God, the creator, was harsh from my point of view back then, but Jesus was the one that was loving. So as far as hope goes, from the Protestant point of view, Christians can look forward to living in heaven for all eternity. This is the goal there, getting my own little bit of real estate up in heaven and living together with the angels and the different people from my church, or other type of Christians that are around, and some throughout history, the saints, and also my family as well would be there, or the Christians would have their family there, at least some of them. Because to be qualified for heaven is an individual thing. You qualify as an individual. You have to have your own individual relationship with Jesus, according to the Protestant Pentecostal type of understanding. But the problem is, heaven is exclusive, and only one in several million can actually enter. The Bible talks about 144,000. Boy, if there's like 8 billion on the earth at the moment, how many were there, 20 years ago? Oh, there was billions then as well, and a lot of those have died since then and been replaced by other births. Oh, and 20 years before that, there were billions that had died. So there's, tens of billions in, that have died. And how many have gotten into heaven? If you're talking about 144,000, how many Christians are having their the family that they love with them? It depends on the individual. It's nothing that can be guaranteed within the Christian teaching. And this was hard for me. This was like a harsh type of thing. As far as the love side of things goes, as the point of view from as a Christian, I would see that nature works in beautiful harmony. There's so much beauty there. There's so much variety with color. So my eyes can have great experience with the whole thing of what God has made. And there's flavors as well. So it's not just my eyes, but my taste buds. And sounds as well. So many different sounds of different birds and different things with the weather and everything else that's going on. And the aromas. And also the textures of things. There's different ways of doing this as well. It isn't just patting a horse, but if you ride a horse, whoa, that's more exhilarating in different ways. And we can experience so much from nature. And there's so much that we can experience and feel joy from it. It's a symphony for our senses. And God created all this. And so, okay, fine. There's a lot of things that is there for the love. And it's not just hypothetical love. It's not just something that you have to discover for yourself. But the way that humans come around is designed to be able to have people that have already experienced this that are guiding you through your life. Because as we're born as babies to parents. And so you're born into a family. And here's the representative of mankind, my dad, and the representative of womankind is my mum. And I've got a good understanding on how to relate to different people through different generations or within the family. This is a whole, great ideal there. The downside, of course, is that not all families are good. And actually, when people hear that, oh, you call God Heavenly Father, my father wasn't very good. That's an insult. My father disappeared. So, not my experience. My family stayed together. There were different ways of expressing themselves in the family as well. So, with some families, there was strong discipline, and it isn't the best type of way of expressing love. And for when you have children, then you'll either repeat exactly the way that your parents raised you, or you analyze it, you criticize it, and you say, I'm not going to raise my kids the way that I was raised. And then also the expression of love within many Christians, unfortunately, is not really understanding how to do this. And there's so many different Christian within my own church that I had from before the meeting up with the Family Federation. There were, so I was in the Uniting Church. Uniting Church was when 3 different church groups, Methodist, Congregational, and Presbyterians, got together. That means 3 different buildings in the one suburb. And the donations that come in cannot support 3 different buildings. So the pastors in those 3 areas were kind of sharing the workload at the time. So 3 different families, and then there was also a seminary nearby for the Uniting Church. This was in the Strathfield area. And so there were like 5 different preacher kids of preachers around about my age group. I went overseas for 5 years, and when I came back, 5 of them, actually there was 8 different kids, and 5 of them had marriage problems by the time within that 5-year period. And it's like, yeah, things like the fall were not clarified for Christianity, and so there's a lot of misunderstandings there, and there are different problems of the way that families are expressed and the way that kids or youth do. Yeah, it's painful at times, the way that within Christianity people see there's this one who was backsliding, this one had a child out of marriage, this one celebrated his daughter's first birthday with a divorce, and there were different things that were going on. So the whole thing, when I met the Family Federation, I had 2 things that I experienced that I hadn't experienced before within my standard Christian faith. One thing was hope. And the whole thing of hope was that, so there were a couple of things that, a few things that I had problems with. One was my relationship with God. I viewed God as something scary. Another thing was the hope. What does the hope hold for in the future? And the hope in the future was Armageddon, destruction of the earth, as far as what's going on here on earth. And that's scary. The type of way that people were suffering. There's, even really big Christians, really famous Christians that are saying either God is not all loving or God is not all knowing, because you can't be either all knowing and all loving and have so much suffering around in the world. Now, there's an answer to that. Please, if this is what is, if you're listening to this on a recording or something like this, and this is a feeling that you have about God and it's kind of angst, making you angry or something like this, please continue listening. There are different ways to answer this. As a matter of fact, get back to the person that introduced you to this video and say, listen, there must be more of an answer there to in this principle, because this is what Randall was saying up here, that theologians were guessing. Their fears may have been wrong. Listen to the end. There is great hope. So the whole thing of hope is the world just going to just be destroyed? One thing we understand about God is that he's not a failure. Hope, God is not a failure. If I'm a carpenter and I make a chair, and the first time you go to use the chair falls to pieces. What do you think I'm like as a carpenter? A bit of a failure, right? And then I think, maybe I didn't think big enough. This time, I'll make a house. And the first time you close the door, the whole thing falls down. I'm even a bigger failure then. Because the greater the work, the greater the creation, if that fails, then the bigger the failure. So if this world, is it like what God wanted from the beginning? If this world is not what God wanted from the beginning, then is God a failure? This is like there's no real answer to that with a lot of theologians, and they're saying God is going to get rid of this world and then we're all going to live in heaven and that's the only way around. God is going to get rid of this world and then bring down a new world, and a very limited number, 144,000, is going to live on it or something like that. And that sounds like God failed at something with this type of understanding. So there's all this different understanding with over there on the with Jesus coming in the clouds, with people being caught up in the clouds, with the stars falling from earth to earth, and that the earth is consumed with fire. All these things have different understandings in the Bible themselves. Tongues of fire is, well, the tongue gives the truth, and the truth can be burning to destroy the sin. The whole thing that we are talking about here, we go through a lot in the principle. And a lot of these explanations, including like Luke 17, it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. And so the whole way of the destruction that went on. So the whole thing is, God had this plan on when he created, and there was a formation of how things were going along, and it came up with the growth. And then at some stage, there was a fall. And so God had to repeat the type of things that were going on there so that it would come back. And so because we fell around away from centered on God, more centered on Satan, as we do the cycle, we come back to repeat nature so that we can come back to this point, which is a point of salvation. The last days, or the end of the world, is actually the end of Satan's world, not the physical world. I mean, as it was in the days of Noah, if the world was meant to be destroyed in the time of Noah, seems to be an awful lot of world still around at the moment. The world itself did not sin. The thing that needs to change is the heart of man. And when we take responsibility to change, then as this cycle comes around to the point where we can try again. So there was a time of Noah. So you can see there there was a time of Noah, there was a time of Jesus, and then we're waiting for the second coming. And so when this comes around, this is a time when real hope is available. And this is what I understood, that I didn't really have much hope looking at things as a Christian, but understanding things through the principle, there's a lot more hope there. Also, so many people going into hell. Hang on. God can only save those who are alive. There's no plan for those who have already died. What a small God. When we really understand things, it's very handy for some denominations to focus on, hell is eternal and, it'll be eternal damnation and things like that, because it scares people to join their church and to follow their understanding of salvation. There's other churches, other Christian churches, like the Christadelphians, for example, and they say, no. When it says in the Bible that hell is there, it's eonial, not eternal. An eon, or many eons. But an eon is finite. It will end. So the whole idea, when in the principle, we look at different things of how God is not just the God of those who are alive. God is also aware of those that have passed away. And if God is a God of love, and he is eternal, that means that he's going to be hearing the screams from hell for all eternity. And how can a loving God continue with that? So there's within humankind, we are the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world. We have both a physical side of things, or as we teach in one of the ways that we express that is Hyungsang, and there's a spiritual side, or Sungsang. And because we are that center for both the physical and the spiritual things, we are like the microcosm of all this. We understand it. Because we are the bridge there, we are the medium of harmony, and we can rule. God set us up so that, okay, who's going to be the rulers of the physical world, there. God created us to be co-creators so that we can inherit things from God. So we have that different value. And this isn't something for Christians. When I was a Christian, if I heard this, I would have thought, hang on, you're talking about spirits? That's all of the devil, isn't it? Please remember, Jesus also spoke with different personalities that had died. He had on the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17, he was talking to Moses and Elijah. The disciples were there witnessing this. Now, if Moses and Elijah were there, they were not there physically. But because humans are spiritual, we were spiritually, the disciples were spiritually tuned enough to be able to perceive the spirit of Jesus talking to the spirit of Moses and Elijah. And so there is a very strong and real spiritual side of things. I mean, we're aware of that. We're going to be in heaven. We're going to be spiritually alive at that time. So how is the interaction going with the physical world and spiritual world? There is an understanding there that God has. But because of limited understanding, we don't see how big God is in being able to have plans on the resurrection of people, even after they they pass away. And we can actually see, you know, you're thinking, okay, so do you have any evidence of that? You know, when has that ever happened? There are so many times when we study history. This is going from Abraham through to Jesus, and looking at that timeline and comparing it with the timeline from Jesus through to, well, this period as it ends. And the time period, like 400 there and 400 there, 400 here and 400 here, 120 here, 120 here. These time periods were within like 2% correct of each other. So it's not a coincidence that these happened. The similar type of circumstances happened at that time. The environment, the political type of structures there, the experiences that the Jews went through compared to the way, things that the Christians went through. How a certain personality would stand up at a different time. There was a Moses figure in the time from Abraham to Jesus, and he was the one who was able to bring them out of slavery. Well, in Rome, there was a time of persecution to the Christians at that time, and there was a personality in a Moses type of figure that helped people to not be, you know, being thrown to the lions and things like that all the time. Somebody actually came in that Moses figure at the same type of time period that was able to restore these things. This isn't just a coincidence that it happened with the same type of who, what, where, when. That the same thing happened with the same type of person at the same type of time period. It's like you can see the fingerprints of God that is moving throughout history. And when we have a look at that as well, and it just reassures you that God really is there doing things. So what was the whole thing that God was trying to focus on? If God is not a failure, then what is it that we're meant to be? Some people think that when God created Eden, he created an individual, Adam, and another individual, Eve. They weren't just two individuals. That was the beginning of a family. These were meant to be the parents of all humankind. But the thing was, God created Adam, God created Eve. Did God create the children? Didn't have to. He set the whole thing up so that we would be the creators of our own children. We would become co-creators with God to create the family, to create the society, to create the nation, to create the world, the whole world population there. God didn't want us to be experiments. God wasn't thinking like that. When you create something, just like when when a man creates something, and as an artist or a creator, as a cook, making a cake or anything like that. Sorry, but it says that man there, it should be human, but you know, because men and women. But when you make something, you do this so that you can have a personal relationship there. And this brings you joy. And so the whole thing of God created us was that God wanted to have this personal relationship with us. And it was to bring joy in this relationship so that God and human beings together would have this this great relationship. And what's the greatest type of love experience or example that we find in humankind? Basically, the way the parents have such a variety of kids, and yet for the parent, the child is not expendable. there's a deep heart that the parent has for all of us. So this structure here, you'd see when you study principle, that's God. And for this one, it's got the husband and the wife. So there's the man and the woman that come together to create the family. And then there's the child. God has set up this whole type of structure so that it isn't just an educational thing. Okay, here are two teachers. It isn't just a government thing. Oh, here are people that can provide the food for you, that can provide the shelter for you. It's a heartistic thing where the parents are artistically connected there and teaching this love of God. This is a beautiful structure. This is the way, if there was God-centered families raising children like this so that their understanding on how to relate to human beings is as harmonious as a heavenly family, this is the way to build the kingdom of heaven on earth. And that's what the goal of God was. That's what the prayer of Jesus was. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I said I had two experiences. One was hope. The other thing that I experienced for the first time when I heard principle was understanding that God was a God of love, no strings attached. This is awesome. Meeting my estranged parent in a way that I can artistically connect with him. And the thing with, so God is way bigger than you think. We were taught about a God that could fit inside the mind of the theologians that came up with that teaching. But have a detailed look at the divine principle and discover how much bigger God can be. So that if this is turned into a little video, somebody says, hey, I found the recording of this talk that was given, and I've just sectioned off a little bit where Uncle Randall is talking about his experience as being, a believer listening to this. Now, can I also say, we would love you to, have this great experience and, join the Family Federation. But if you are moved to this to strengthen your own faith and have a deep relationship in your own church as well, or own faith, that is possible. We have the PCLC, where many different Christian ministers are actually coming along and, joining with us all the time in different things. There's UPF, which is bringing people from all different fields, politicians, doctors. There's different areas that people, they don't want to leave what they're doing. They're experts in that area, but still to get this vision to be able to help work things together. You can still listen to principle, find that God is bigger than he was before from your own understanding, and that there's a whole lot of things there, that a whole lot of opportunities and in the relationship, and it can help your own relationship too. And a big focus as well is our family values. That's why it's a family federation. And so a lot of individuals are reconfirming their marriage within ceremonies with us. And I actually took part in an event that actually made it into the Guinness Book of Records, when all these couples came together to show world peace. And there was like over 80 different nationalities that was represented there. And we were able to have this mass wedding that went on. And it was, amazing. It was, you never forget it. Can I just thank you that I think we're going to be running out of time pretty soon. So there may be some questions. I'll leave time for some questions now. Thank you very much. And and I better find out how to stop sharing.
Thank you. Randall, for sharing this morning about love, hope, and faith, and the greatest of all is love, and that's so very true. And it's a simple thing that God expected to have a family and expected to not have anything go wrong, and then he took the risk of giving us responsibility. And ever since we had the responsibility, we've struggled with finding our way back home. But always when I think of that Bible quote, often I always think that really we need love most of all, because the other Bible quote that sort of compares to that is the one that clanging like a noise. If you don't have love, then it's just all empty and hollow. So thank you. And if there's anyone that would like to make a comment or share something, please go ahead.
I think I'm picking up on your question, and the answer is 27. Does that sound like the right answer? Then you did ask the right question. Okay, so come up with a better question. What's a better question then?
People are still thinking, I think.
There was one term that I used there. I said that I was an active Christian. What do you understand an active Christian would be?
No, we've got someone.
Oh, sorry, someone said a question. That's fine.
Yeah, is that me? Why is it? Yeah.
Hi, Uncle Randall. Good to hear from you again.
Great to see
Thank you for the interesting presentation. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the Christian perspective? I feel like, although they are supposed to be the most enlightened, I find that when I communicate with some Christians, it's very difficult for them to grasp the concept of other religions possibly even being partially truthful. Does that make sense? Like they just feel like, oh, it has nothing to do with Jesus, so it must be completely false. Like there's nothing useful in the religion. I find that the Christianity is the most cocky religion that I've ever. And that's coming from someone of a religion who knows most of the truth. So
Okay, so they believe in a God of love, yes? They still believe in a God of love.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, so when did Christianity come up? So if the earth is like 6,000 years according to the Bible, for the first 1,000 years, nothing. For the next 1,000 years, oh, well, that's when Abraham came up, and there was something with the Jews in an area that's about the size of Victoria. Or Tasmania. This is the island that sticks out of the bottom of Australia. That's the area of the world where that's the size of the area of the world that God was expressing himself for the Jews. And you're saying that, but Jesus wasn't around at that time. So this is a loving God with so many people around the world, and he's got this with the Jews to start with, and it went on for another 1,000 years and still no Jesus. And then Jesus comes at the end of that. And so just 2,000 years ago, in this 6,000-year history, you're saying that God has done nothing in all that time? Okay, so you may say that Christianity is like the university level. Are you going to go up to high school students and scold them and tell them that they're terrible because they are not learning at the university level? Hey, they're still learning something. It is much easier to teach someone about how to live in heaven if they've already got an understanding of a spiritual lifestyle, of, a quest beyond just eat, meat, give me food type of thing. So if it's just physical, then it's hard to teach them about Christianity. And so there were all these different religions around. And you may say, okay, this was more a tech level. This was more a high school level. This was more primary school level. This was more kindergarten level. But there was this education that God was doing to people all in all different parts of the world, so to raise them up, to make it easier for them to return to being children of God. So this is the whole thing with Family Federation. There's a whole family type of feeling there. Does that help?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because it's so funny that that's exactly how I explained it to them. And for them, it was like the first time they've ever heard that concept. They were ready to argue with me, but I explained it like that. But the only thing I was missing was the concept that God is very loving, and that's the motivation behind the reason why he was trying to raise our spiritual knowledge. So I think that's an important concept, which because I think people do say God is love, but sometimes they think of it a little bit too legalistic. So I can appreciate that from your sharing.
To understand the love of God, you have to understand the nature of God. And that is the very first thing that we start to learn in the principle of creation. We understand that, hey, to have a give and take relationship, you need something in common. And I'm, quickly understanding that all of creation is made like this kind of unity of a yin yang of male female, or a yin yang of internal external. And if this is all in the creation, it must be in the creator as well. There's this common base that God has. That is, he can't deny us, because there is this thing that is uniting us, because we're so similar in the way that he's created us. And so there is that affinity. God can't deny us. We're eternal beings. He can't just leave us in hell. I think also for some of the religions, they try to scare you to say, you can't go to that religion, you can't go to that denomination. We are the ones that have salvation. You have to listen to us. And I think also the way that things developed in the islands was that there was this competition between the missionaries to claim different islands for themselves. And so one is very Methodist, one is very Presbyterian, one is very Catholic, or something like this. And they made it hard for the different missionaries to get a foothold in those areas. And so there was this, jealously guarding people to have salvation from their understanding. And so, but hey, these people, they're children of God as well. God loves them as well. Let's find out how God has been loving them. Sorry, I've been going on a lot.
Thank you, Uncle. It was a good sharing.
Thank you. All right.
Did anyone else want to ask something quickly? And remember to unmute yourself, the microphone, before you start talking.
No, that's
I
it.
didn't have time to prepare. I prayed on what kind of things may be good for some of the different brothers and sisters, and if people wanted to catch up with the recording, how they would want to share this with different people that they are in contact with. So I thought that was something that may be handy for you. So this was something where you don't have to be a member of the Family Federation to listen to it. So
All right. So thank you, Randall. Thank you, everyone. It's time now for us to close up with our unison prayer. So I'll just bring up the screen. Here it is. Okay, let's pray together. Thank you. Jew, Jew. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Randall, for sharing, and I hope everyone has a great day, and see you all again tomorrow. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Randall. Thank you, Miwa.